Yeah, he can protect. Yes. We got to protect our seniors.
Hi, Jeff.
Continue, but to point that out. You made him feel good.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here at Miami Hamilton Downtown. I am Jeannie Weeks, Community Outreach Liaison for the Office of the Butler County Prosecutor, and I'd like to welcome you to the first in a series of presentations from the Butler County Crimes Against the Elderly Task Force. The Crimes Against the Elderly Task Force was born when a man who had been the victim of a vicious assault shared his story with a man of wisdom, compassion, and foresight. Butler County Prosecutor Mike Mosier contacted every law enforcement agency in Butler County requesting a representative for the task force, and each agency eagerly complied. But it takes more than just law enforcement to address this growing issue. It wasn't enough to create a task force to assist with the investigation and prosecution of these criminals. We need to be able to offer assistance when an elderly person is victimized. That prompted us to invite representatives of the agencies in Butler County that serve the elderly to be a part of the task force, and they became enthusiastically committed. But one key component was still missing. So we invited members of the business community to become involved in an effort to educate the elderly and the public. With the support of the Butler County Commissioners, this month has been designated Butler County Crimes Against the Elderly Awareness Month. Today, we're here to tell you about our task force, bringing to you Mike Derrickson, the man with the inspiration, Lieutenant Mike Kraft from the Butler County Sheriff's Office, the man with the dedication, and Butler County Prosecutor Mike Mosier, the man with the commitment. So with that, Mike, if you'd like to tell your story.
Good afternoon. All of you here, this incident happened to me was July 24th of 2010. It happened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You think everybody's safe in the light. It wasn't. When I left the Hamilton Masonic Temple, the rear door, turned around, locked the door, and that's the last I remembered. I was down. They not only knocked me down, they stomped my face, both sides, till I come to and found out they'd taken my wallet. This was a vicious thing. We all have to watch what's around us. You're never safe. Never safe. And then it's never been solved. This has not been solved. This is why we need the support of everybody, the citizens, the prosecutor's office, the police agencies, no matter where this happens. This happened in Hamilton, and still the sheriff was involved in it. The chief of Hamilton was involved in it. I called and reported it, like I should have. Went to hospital. Get to hospital, and the doctor over there told the wife, one more hit on the head and he'd have been dead. We wouldn't have had just an assault. We would have had a homicide. It gets a little scary. A little scary. So how do they investigate it? We don't know. Nobody come forward. Nobody's talked. Most of the time they get somebody to talk. We need the citizens of this county to call our hotline. The prosecutor's got it set up. Give the information. You don't have to give your name. Give the information. They'll dispatch it to whoever it goes to, and this will help. This is the way we solve some of this brutality that some of these thugs want to bring on our elderly. You know, I told them, I says, I can't run that fast, I'm old. I can't see that well because I'm old. So what I do, it's hard, it's hard. I doubt if there's too many 65-year-olds can run that mile or get away from somebody. You, the people, have to help us. Everybody has to cooperate in these. If you hear something, tell somebody. Call the authorities and let them know what you've heard. That's how we solve it. Put these thugs in jail where they belong because they're out there to hurt somebody else. So I've worked very hard with this crime alert. I believe in it. I'm dedicated to it. And I think our officers and our prosecutor is pushing for this to run these thugs out of this county. And I appreciate every bit that they've done. You know, the wallet and the money that they took means nothing. My life does. And I'm going to protect my life. And I think each and every one of you can do the same thing. And I'm right there to help.
I certainly want to thank everybody today for paying attention to this important issue, and Miami University for making this facility available, and for our audience who is listening carefully to what we are trying to accomplish. I was asked why now with respect to an elderly task force, and the answer is why not? We have a task force with respect to child abuse. We now have the task force against crimes against the elderly, which is the bookend and completes the picture with respect to how we are treating the citizens of Butler County. We protect the young. We now protect the old with equal diligence and vigilance. And to make you aware of what is out there that is preying upon you, the elderly, just like there are those out there that are preying on our young people. This began, the inspiration for this was the gentleman that you just heard speak. Mike was brutally attacked. He's an elderly fellow, and he came to me and he said, you know, Mike, there's an enhancement for people that are over 65 with respect to criminal penalties. And I reminded him it's actually for those that are 65 and older, which I jokingly said makes me more than what I thought I was. I used to think I was just middle-aged. Now I know I've joined the ranks of the elderly also. And the elderly need the protection, they need the awareness, and they need you, the public, to understand that through education and your efforts, we can put the brakes on those that are taking advantage of our elderly, not just by the physical abuse that happened to Mike Derrickson, but also the financial abuse that the elderly are unfortunately so susceptible to. And why is that? Well, it's because the elderly of our society, which is a growing, burgeoning population, they are the ones that have the money. The folks that are in their 40s and their 50s, they might be living on a shoestring. They're putting kids through college. They're buying tennis shoes and sports equipment and putting money for the field trips and things like that. So they don't have the assets that the older generation does by Social Security and the pensions that they have. So they are a resource that can be mined by those criminals that want to take advantage of them. And Sheriff Jones wrote to the Journal News last year and said, look, there's a scam going on involving the elderly. It's the grandparent scam, and the grandparent scam works like this. A call is made in which an individual pretends to be the grandchild of a grandparent. This purported grandchild calls and says, gee, Grandma or Grandpa, I'm in a faraway place or a faraway land or perhaps in Mexico or Canada, and I'm in jail and they won't release me unless you send bond money to get me out of jail. Generally, that's about the way it works. The unsuspecting grandparent thinks that this really is the grandchild and then is asked to wire money for that purpose. The wire transfer being the key because it is such a direct way of taking your money and saying goodbye to it permanently. The money is then wired and never seen again. It turns out there was no grandchild in jail. And the Attorney General of the state of Ohio has also been very cooperative and helpful in this effort. And he has informed us all that the average hit, the average loss on the grandparent scam is $7,500 per scam. which is a tremendous burden on somebody that is losing that type of money when they are in the ranks of the elderly. So it occurred to me that we can't do that on a just one-time only basis. While it was wonderful that the sheriff got that message out to the Journal, and it was wonderful that the Journal took the time to detail this scam, there was a recognition by myself and law enforcement agencies that this was just going to be a one-time notification. And how many people would miss that article, and how many people would not see the significance of that? How many people would not recognize that this could happen to them? Unfortunately, way, way too many. So we decided, law enforcement, myself, and all of the law enforcement agencies in Butler County got together like the spokes on a wheel, and we decided that we would be the ones to receive these calls and educate the public. And it's our belief that if we can get the message out to the 368,000 people in Butler County on how identity theft works, we will go a long way to stopping it in Butler County. We all know in Butler County, the law enforcement agencies, we know that we can't change the world, but by God, we can do something about changing things in Butler County. So law enforcement got together with me, and I got together with them. And then we all got together with the business community and the social community, the people that are handling the elderly and social services organizations, the banking institutions that happen to have a direct relationship with the elderly with respect to handling their accounts and things of that nature, because the banks want to protect them too. And we are so grateful to have those people with us today. Margot Halcomb from the First National Bank. And thank you, Margot, for being here and paying attention to what the elderly needs are with respect to educating them about how they can be taken advantage of and how we can stop that. And Jeff Thurman, with the social services end of this, the work that you do and giving us the opportunity to educate the elderly in those agencies and those facilities that you sponsor and work with every day. It is a blessing for our organization to have you on board also, as are all of the other agencies that work with this project in Butler County. It is all of our desire that this become institutionalized, just as we have institutionalized the task force against child abuse. We want to institutionalize the elderly task force with respect to the elderly, so that we can put it all together and go forward on a uniform, continuing basis, as opposed to being just a flash in the pan, so that people don't say down the road, gee, whatever happened to that elderly abuse task force? Where did that go? I want it to be real. I want it to work every day. And that's why Mike Derrickson, with what happened to him on the physical end of this, gives a face to what we're doing with respect to the elderly. There are many examples of identity fraud that we're working on. As an example, that's where we usually get a lot of calls. But it's not just financial abuse, it's the physical abuse. We get calls from people that are being taken advantage of physically by perhaps their own children, perhaps their grandchildren, perhaps some neighbor that has wormed their way into their life by a power of an attorney or something like that. And we get these calls, and we are the prosecutor's office, we are sort of the clearinghouse for many of these calls, and that's where the hotline goes to. It goes to my office. And then from me, it gets parceled out to the agencies, the police departments and so forth, the law enforcement agencies that can best handle that particular issue. Because with respect to this problem, the elderly sometimes feel a little resistant about talking to the police for whatever reason. But perhaps not so with respect to a hotline where they can call in, even anonymously, and feel perhaps a little more comfort and less embarrassed about talking to somebody first before it becomes a police matter. What we are all about is protection, but what we are all about also is education. I will tell you that we are working with the legislature, the United States government legislature. We want Congress to do something about one aspect of identity fraud that is a real problem, and that is your Social Security number. The key to the bank begins with your Social Security number. If you give out your Social Security number, whether you're young, old, or in between, if you give out your Social Security number and somebody has your name, it is a very quick step to get your birth date. Anybody in this room, give me your name. I'll have your birth date in about 30 seconds. If you don't give me your Social Security number, I'm not going to be able to do much with your birth date and your name, but I'll be able to do everything you give me your Social Security number. What I don't want to do is educate the criminals by this television broadcast on how to obtain that Social Security number. It's one of the problems. But I want you to know that your Social Security number may be on certain documents other than just on a Social Security card. It is up to you to know where your Social Security number exists and on what document it might be on. And regrettably, change happens only after enough stories come forward about somebody losing their fortune because their Social Security number happened to be on some government document that was available or through trickery could be obtained by a criminal, and people lose their fortune, they lose their future. With respect to identity fraud, I'm reminded of what Shakespeare said in one of his plays. Who steals my purse steals trash. Who steals my name steals who I am. And that's a lesson that we should all learn from identity theft. You've got to protect it as you would yourself, because your identity is who you are. And so, as I said, our job is to educate the public, and we are pressing on to do just that. And with your help, we will continue to make a difference with respect to our elderly citizens, just as we are with all the other members of our society. So thank you again for coming. Now, what I'd like to do now is turn this over. I probably talked a little too long. But lawyers are like that. We're wordy people. But I want to give you an opportunity to talk to Lieutenant Mike Kraft from the Butler County Sheriff's Department, one of the many members of all of the law enforcement agencies involved. And I'd like to introduce him to you because he's going to be speaking on behalf of our Butler County Sheriff with respect to how his agency works with the other agencies and my agency to do the work that we are dedicated to do. And by the way, one last word, as they say, almost in conclusion, I'd like to say that I want to thank the Butler County Commissioners, each and every one of them, all three, because they all agreed to fund what we are doing with respect to our Elder Abuse Task Force. And without our Butler County Commissioners doing this, I wouldn't be able to do the work that I'm doing. And so I want to, and all of the others involved would not be able to work they're doing. So I want to thank them particularly. But Mike, if you'd be kind enough.
I'm Lieutenant Mike Kraft. I'm the division commander over the investigations division in the drug unit at the sheriff's office. And, you know, I personally want to thank Mike and his office for this initiative and what they've put forward with this program. This is near and dear to my heart. I want to give you just a little bit of history about my involvement with the elderly and with crime. I started the Triad program here in Butler County probably 15 years ago as a young detective. I was the first detective in the history of Butler County, as far as I know, with the sheriff's office to be assigned as a detective assigned to crimes against the elderly. I'm no longer in that capacity right now, and unfortunately, because of budget cuts, that position doesn't exist anymore. So in a lot of our programs that we started in Triad, the Beacon Light program, the Are You OK program that called the house every day, these were so important to the sheriff and near and dear. I believe Mike sat on our council on that program, and it was very near and dear to the sheriff. And I can assure you that Sheriff Jones loves the fact that we're getting back into this because it's one of the most abused populations that we have. And like Mike touched on, and I think it's important to reiterate it one more time, you know, in law enforcement, we've got the DARE program for the kids. We've got the GREAT program to teach them about gangs. We've got sexual abuse task force. We've got all these different elements in crime and nothing out there for the seniors. And these are the people that have given the most to us in our life and put us in the position that we're at today. So the Sheriff Jones is extremely excited to be a part of this and has, even in the times, and I speak not lightly about this, my detective division is half of what it was 2 years ago. My drug unit is half of what it was 2 years ago. Times are tough right now, but Sheriff Jones has made the ultimate commitment to be a part of this program. I am the person that's assigned to it. Mike knows I'm at the prosecutor's office's wish at any time on this. My entire staff will work a case, and we've done some already, and I think made some headway and helped some seniors in this short period of time that Mike started this. So the sheriff's committed to it. I'm committed to it. I have some other personal experiences. You know, Mike talked about the grandfather-grandmother scam. My Aunt Carol lives in the city of Fairfield. She's 80 years old, and her son's child was in school at Ohio State University, and she got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night, and it was the Canadian police that called her, allegedly, and they are so good that they even knew the nickname. The kid gets on the phone and says, "Grandma, it's Bub." How would she know that she calls her grandson Bub? And it sounded like him to her. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. She's 80 years old, and she believed that was her grandson on the phone. They got her for $2,700. We've never solved that, and Fairfield worked hard on it. The majority of these are not solved, and that's why I agree with Mike when they talk about the education aspect of it. How do they get this personal information? Investigatively, we have our thoughts. Attorney General's office has their thoughts. It could be through the social network. It could be through the community phones on the campuses of colleges. There's a lot of different ways that they can be getting this personal information when they go and then go prey on the elderly. You know, that's something we're working on our end. Again, we're not going to advertise some of the things that we believe is going on, but the point that needs to be made is they are getting the information. They are getting your personal stuff, you know, all the way down to your grandson's nickname, stuff like that. This is how sophisticated the criminal element is today, not only in our country, but other countries. You know, my aunt got it for $2,800. The average is $7,500. She was lucky. You know, she was lucky to only be taken for $2,800 because she would have probably paid a whole lot more to help her grandson out that was in trouble in Canada and had the whole story about how he had just went over there with a couple buddies to go to the casino, and that mom and dad didn't know about it, and please don't tell them. Please don't tell them. Let me tell them when I get home, Grandma, help me. So Grandma helped him. And this is just one of the many scams that we've had to deal with. So, you know, the important message that I want to send is, over my years dealing with the seniors, one of the most heart-wrenching things that I had to deal with was finding out 6 months later about a senior that had been violated. And I sit down with them and I'm talking to them and I'm like, why didn't you call us? Because they were too embarrassed to call us. And that's what I want to change. That's what I want this program to change, so that the seniors are not embarrassed. You got to understand that as a law enforcement officer, we get tricked too. We've been to school, we're educated. The prosecutors, the attorneys, they get tricked too. You know, everybody falls into that box from time to time. Just because you fall for something, the quicker you report that to us, the more avenues we have to try to track it down. So my message to you is, anytime something happens to you, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. Call us. That's what we're here for. Yeah, we've got a lot of serious crime going on out there, but your crime is just as serious as the rape, the murder, the drugs, and everything else. If something happens to you, you don't feel that it was right, I don't care if it's getting your car worked on and you're charged $1,000 and you feel like they cheated you, you call us. You pay our salary. That's what we're here for. Thank you. If there's anything I can do, let me know.
Mike touched on some wonderful points, and I want you all to bear in mind that we are now living in a technical age, in the computer age. And in the old days, crimes were committed with somebody wearing a mask and holding a gun or a knife. Now, they are holding a mouse and they're sitting in front of a computer, and they might be thousands of miles away or continents away. So we're not going to be able to catch those people when they are reaching out to you through the ether, through the internet, over the airwaves, if you will. We're not going to be able to stop them, but we are going to at least be able to educate you against the scams that they are coming up with. And they're very, very creative. That's why we have posted on the website our alerts. And these come up like mushrooms in the spring. And when they do, we're going to post them on our internet, on our website, and you'll be able to go to the website and learn how these scams are working. And as Mike said, don't be ashamed if you be taken advantage of, because these criminals are very, very sharp in how they are conducting themselves. But if you alert us, we can alert others. One example, a fellow called up and said, Mike, I'm really kind of excited. I've won the lottery, and they're coming over to the house tonight with the money in cash, but I have to have $5,000 available for them to pay for the insurance to bring the money to my house in cash. And we then had a discussion about why he didn't win the lottery. But he wanted to believe it, and that's what generally happens. People want to believe that they've won something or that they have been treated specially somehow or another. And if it's too good to be true, as Mike said, it probably isn't. So please be mindful of the scams and be mindful of how people are using the internet to get into your billfold. Thank you.
We have, since the task force began in September, I can't begin to tell you the number of speaking engagements that we have been on between the senior citizens groups, the home health industry. If anybody would like to have a member of our task force come to speak, all they need to do is to call our office. We'd be glad to set it up. Getting out into every community in Butler County is crucial to the success of this program. And that's the only way we're going to really get the awareness out there, not only with the TV programs like this, but with the help of everybody on the task force and the public. And we're also counting on the senior citizens to help spread the message and to their sisters, their neighbors, the ladies that they go to church with. We need to keep this message going that we're here, we want to make a difference, but we need your help to do it. Anybody else with a question? I'd like to say we have 3 more of these presentations that will be coming up every Tuesday in the month of March. Next Tuesday, we will be discussing elder abuse, the physical abuse that our citizens fall prey to. We will be having the family member of a victim who was brutally attacked and ultimately became deceased at the hands of his grandson. So we'll have that presentation. The following week, we will be talking about financial abuse, and our guest speaker will be Margot from First National Bank, First Financial, which will have a lot of information to help. And our final series will be on contractor fraud. So we're hoping that we really get the message out there on how we can educate people so that you do not become a victim to the scams and the frauds that perpetrate our community.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I'm sorry? Ah, there you go.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for coming.
All right, you're talking about Fort Hamilton? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of what the menu is today, but yeah, I think with Henry taking over,